Coming up on Network Africa, post-election protests in Mozambique leaves 10 people dead, dozen others injured. Vote counting begins in pivotal presidential elections in Botswana as ruling party expected to extend its 58-year rule. Plus, France jails former doctor 27 years for complicity in 1994 Rwanda genocide. Hello and welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Mozambique, where tensions remain high after at least 10 people were killed and 63 others injured by gunfire during protests that followed disputed election results. Demonstrations erupted after Mozambique's Electoral Commission declared the ruling party Frelimo the winner of the October 9 election, extending its 49-year rule. Opposition groups and observers claim the election was marred by fraud. In response to the protests, police used tear gas and live ammunition. For Human Rights Watch independently confirmed 11 deaths and more than 50 serious injuries, noting that the actual numbers might be higher since many injured did not report to hospitals. Opposition candidate Venancio Mondlane, who came in second but claims victory, has also called for renewed protests. Well, joining us now on the program from Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, is VOA correspondent Charles Manguiro. Hello, Charles. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Let's begin with what is happening at the moment in Mozambique.
Good afternoon. What is happening at the moment in Mozambique is that today, opposition candidate Venancio Mondlane had called for a national-wide shutdown, which means there was no businesses and everything was just shut down. People did not take to the streets. He was saying that today it's the third day of the process of his phase of, he has promised 25 days of terror, so today was the third phase. The first was last week when police clashed with protesters in Maputo and in the northern city of Nampula. Police used gas, live bullets and tear gas everyone. So today was the third day of the phase. Nobody was in the streets. People seem to be listening to Venancio Mondlane, who lost the elections to Frelimo's Daniel Chapo.
Now, help us understand, what the election process was like on October 9th, leading up until the results being announced and even post-election violence that we're seeing.
The election was relatively calm and it appeared as if everything was fine, but we had reports of many people not voting in many constituencies, that in the northern provinces of Nampula, where some ballot boxes did not arrive on time, people spent queues on time, but in the end, we had reports that everybody reported. But the time the results started trickling out, the ruling party was leading the rest until the official results were announced, giving victory to Frelimo and its candidate Daniel Chapo. Observers reported issues of irregularities committed by the National Elections Commission, and some of the preliminary results spoke about vote rigging, ballot stuffing, and many people did not vote in the remote areas in Mozambique.
Now, the protesters have been out on the streets. Unfortunately, people have died. What is that one demand that the protesters are asking from the government? And is the government even listening to them?
The claim is that people are saying the person we voted did not win the elections. Why? We want the person we voted to be declared the national president. The government has been appealing since day one of the protests that people should not take to the streets. They should not protest using violent means of looting shops and fighting with the police. That is been the reaction with the police so far. They don't want people to fight with the police. They don't want them to use violent means of protesting. If they walk, they say it's a right for the people to protest. But what happens when police see people on the streets, they just shoot them with tear gas and live bullets. In one of the images, Venancio Mondlane was tear gas as he was speaking to the media last week. That was days after his 2 senior officials were gunned down by the police in Maputo City.
Indeed. And talking about, those opposition leaders that were gunned down, what is the update with the case? Have we heard anything about those who perpetrated this act?
So far, no arrests have been made. The police has been quiet. Their first reaction, it is the same until now. They say they'll make sure that the perpetrators of this crime will be brought to book. But so far, we have not seen any action. What is interesting to mention is that the crime took place in one of the upmarkets of Maputo, where street cameras are installed. Police claim to have seen, to be verifying what was recorded by the cameras. But so far, there is no official comment or positioning about who are the criminals and what is happening now. So people are very anxious to see what will be the government actions. This also is fueling tension amongst the people. People are fearing for their lives now, kidnappings and threats by the state operatives since then.
All right, then. Thank you so much. Let's leave it at that. VOA correspondent Charles Manguiro, thank you for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Also, another election in Botswana. The citizens are waiting for the results of Wednesday's election, which could extend the Botswana Democratic Party's 58-year rule. Ballot counting began as soon as polling closed on Wednesday, but some voting stations stayed open long after the official closing time, and that was to allow voters queuing up to cast their ballots. The election will determine the makeup of the diamond-rich Southern Africa country's parliament, and these lawmakers will later choose the president of the country. The party needs to win at least 31 parliament seats to be declared winner. Earlier on, the main opposition party, Umbrella for Democratic Change, UDC, the leader, Duma Boko, voiced concerns about the voting exercise.
Well, we're worried about all these things because they speak to the integrity of the process. And they tell you that we're dealing with an IEC that is hell-bent on ensuring that we do not have free, fair and credible elections. But we make do with what we have. We've put in place our own measures to ensure that we monitor.
For staying in Southern Africa, South African investment company 274 recently launched its first benchmark for diversity, equity and inclusion in asset management. This initiative includes an industry analysis and recognizes the top asset managers who excelled in diversity, equity and inclusion at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Semosa has more.
Investors, professionals and entrepreneurs at the 274 Investor Day highlights economic instability and political uncertainty as one of the causes for unpredictable market conditions affecting investment returns. The CEO of 274, Fatima Vaunda, speaks about the motivation behind creating South Africa's first benchmark for diversity, equity and inclusion in asset management.
The whole idea has been over 20 years in the making. So we established a framework to monitor and create awareness around black and women-owned asset management firms in South Africa. It was a two-pronged approach when we first established in 2007. One was to generate research, and two was to develop an asset manager development program where we can seed and support startup and emerging black and women-owned asset management companies.
But how important is diversity and inclusivity for driving innovation and growth, especially for women-led fund managers?
I think it's extremely important. It's effectively the foundation around a lot of our strategies at 27-4. We try to be impactful in everything we do. We can't be exclusionary in the nature of how we deploy our capital. Capital is sourced from these pools of people, females, black people as defined in the codes, and therefore they need to be the beneficiaries of that capital as well. So for us, it's extremely important. It's kind of the bedrock of our product designs.
Investment manager at 27-4, Roy Ord, believes South Africa has made progress around racial inclusion.
I think South Africa has made a lot of improvements over the last couple of decades around racial inclusion. But I think the target that we've had now is more around how do we bring other groups who have not had the same opportunities as the rest into the mainstream and make sure that this industry is reflective of all of us.
All right, there you have it. We've gathered insights from the industry analysis conducted by 27-4. At the core of this discussion for this benchmark is the focus on diversity and inclusion. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
A court in France has sentenced the former Rwandan doctor to 27 years in jail for crimes relating to the 1994 genocide in his country. Eugene Ramkoi was found guilty of complicity in genocide, complicity in crimes against humanity, and of conspiring to prepare for those crimes. Prosecuting lawyer Nicolas Perron said there was no evidence to show Mr. Ramkoi personally carrying out summary executions or acts of torture, but has a guilt of responsibility as one can, according to him, kill with words. Well, Mr. Ramkoi has denied any wrongdoing, and his lawyers say they plan to appeal the judgment. His trial is the 8th in France relating to the genocide in 1994, when the Hutu majority killed approximately 800,000 people, mostly ethnic Tutsis, in Rwanda. The war in Sudan, the U.S. State Department has condemned attacks by paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, on civilians, urging an immediate end to the violence. During a regular briefing, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller warned that the U.S. will continue imposing consequences on those responsible for fueling atrocities in Sudan. War broke out in mid-April last year from a power struggle between Sudan's army and the paramilitary RSF ahead of a planned transition to civilian rule, and this has triggered the world's largest displacement crisis.
Sudanese Rapid Support Forces has carried out a major and brutal attack across eastern part of the Al Jazeera state in Sudan, located just to the south of Khartoum. They attacked multiple villages in the area, deliberately targeting civilians. Many of the RSF's victims have been children and women. The United States condemns these attacks in the strongest terms and calls on the RSF to halt violence against civilians immediately. The group's leaders have repeatedly committed to their obligation to civilian protection under international humanitarian law, and they must uphold those commitments. The United States recently imposed sanctions on Algoni Hamdan Daglo Musa for his role in RSF atrocities, and we will continue to impose costs on all those committing and fueling these atrocities. These heinous attacks are sadly only the latest in a war that has gone on for far too long. Attacks like these exacerbate the severe hunger and displacement crisis that has put more than 25 million Sudanese in need of emergency humanitarian relief and forced more than 14 million people to flee their homes since the conflict began. Our support for the Sudanese people is steadfast as they demand a sustainable end to the conflict and work to develop a process to resume the stalled political transition to inclusive, civilian-led democratic governance.
Question about the Cuba vote at the UN.
Well, still on Sudan, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk is extremely concerned by the escalating violence and hostilities in Al Jazeera state, which are further exacerbating the risk of attacks against civilians, ethnically motivated violence, and atrocity crimes. Addressing the bi-weekly UN press briefing in Geneva, UN Human Rights Office spokesperson Saif Magango called for all alleged violations to be investigated and those responsible brought to justice following fair trials.
Rice Volker Turk is extremely concerned by the escalating hostilities and violence in Sudan. The violence is taking place in Al Jazeera state. Since the defection of Abu Akla Kaikal, a commander in the Rapid Support Forces to the Sudanese Armed Forces on 20 October, attacks by the RSF on villages in Al Jazeera state have increased, apparently in retaliation for the defection and targeting members of his ethnic group. On Friday, 25 October, at least 124 people were reportedly killed in an attack by RSF ground forces on Ashariha village. This incident follows at least 2 other attacks by the RSF ground forces on the nearby towns of Tambul and Rufa earlier in the week. Reports suggest hundreds of people were killed in Tambul. They indicate at least 25 cases of sexual violence in multiple villages in Sharq al-Ghazira locality, including 3 medical personnel and an 11-year-old girl who died as a result.
Welcome back to the program. Celebrating UN Day in South Sudan, students at the University of Juba find inspiration in the joy of music and dance, expressing a new vision for their beloved country as the world's newest nation navigates the difficult path from conflict to peace. The students were asked to prepare artworks for a special exhibition commemorating United Nations Day under the theme Building a Better Future Together. In Sierra Leone, wares and beauty products made from local ingredients and raw materials were the focus at the second day of the UN Tourism Congress holding in Freetown, the capital. Following the theme of the event, women have been given priority in showing their goods.
The United Nations Tourism Congress opens an exhibition on the second day of the event. Women who have turned mostly local raw materials into products have the floor. Beauty and fashion top the list of products, and the women say the visibility here has a lot of potentials.
Being a disabled woman, I've been doing this for quite a long time, but I've not been having this kind of platform to showcase my business outside there, so the limitation has been seen. But coming to this exhibition, I have seen a kind of improvement and people that have used my product outside, because I used to hack my products on the street and all. Okay. And of course you can see now I'm holding crutch, so the mobility is difficult. So for me to have such opportunity to come out here to showcase my business, it's a great success.
The networking is amazing. Like, I've met people from different regions. I've met some old customers. I've made some new customers. So I'm really thankful for the ministry for putting this together. It's amazing. I mean, just putting women out there and showing us, that we can collaborate and how things, can be done.
We're quite impressed with the output.
Nigeria's former Minister of Information and Tourism, Mr. Lai Mohammed, has been attending the Congress and is happy with the approach adopted.
Yes, we're here to discuss, women in tourism, beyond empowerment to education, finance and innovation. And I have found the entire 2 days so far very exciting, informative, and it shows the real potential of women in tourism in Africa in particular.
The Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs of the Republic of Sierra Leone is also using this event as an opportunity to showcase the country's way of life. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
RFA Lime Bay, a UK Royal Fleet auxiliary vessel, has arrived in the premier port at Papa Quays, Lagos, Nigeria, as part of a defense engagement program across West African partner nations. The visit is part of the maritime cooperation agreed under the UK-Nigeria Security and Defence Partnership in February 2024. While in Nigeria, Lime Bay will conduct a variety of defence engagement activities, including ship tours and hosting of national dignitaries. Now, the ship will also facilitate maritime capability training, utilizing UK Royal Marines and search teams to conduct drills and training with their Nigerian Navy counterparts. At the end of this visit, RFA Lime Bay will participate in a multinational maritime security exercise involving Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, and Nigerian naval forces off the coast of Nigeria. Dr. Kojo Elenitoba Johnson, an international leader in the fields of hematopathology and molecular genomic pathology, as well as a translational researcher, has been inducted into the U.S. National Academy of Medicine. The chairman of Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM, Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa, is one of the first to congratulate the doctor for what she calls an honor well deserved. She applauds his constant research and studies on ways of ameliorating the needs of his patients, which has earned him the highest honor in the field of health and medicine. And finally, on the program, as Americans count down to the November 5 election, which will decide the next president of the country, curiosity is growing in countries around the world where citizens are invested in the next leader of the free world. Here in Lagos, the U.S. Consulate organized an event at the University of Lagos to address thoughts and questions surrounding the process by which Americans elect their leaders. Our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
By end of day November 5, 2024, Americans would have decided on a new president via the democratic process of elections. But the American system of democracy may be confusing to some, as whoever wins the election must secure not just the popular vote, but that of the Electoral College. Understanding the American electoral system is the purpose of this election event, themed Democracy in Action, Understanding the U.S. Election Process, at the University of Lagos, with university management, students, U.S. consulate officials, and the media present. Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Bola Obo, emphasizes the importance of the conversation.
Understanding the electoral process is very crucial in order for us to foster democratic engagement. The democratic values upheld in the United States, such as the freedom of speech, the rule of law, and the protection of individual rights, serve as a model for us all as we strive to enhance our democratic practices here in Nigeria.
Following their opening statements on strengthened democratic processes, U.S. Consulate Political and Economic Chief Michael Irvin advocated why democracy remains the best system of governance.
I can think of no more important issue in our bilateral relationship with Nigeria to talk about with you today than democracy. That hard-fought value and commitment to selecting our leaders openly and transparently as part of a broader process of accountable governance, which is what brings us together today, accountable governance. It sounds so simple, but it has been the most difficult to achieve, to spread, and to sustain around the globe. And nobody has cornered the market on what it means, on how to get there, or how to stay there.
Other issues such as the political parties, absentee diaspora voting were discussed, including the role of young people in the electoral process.
I'm saying things are changing. I think young people are becoming more and more conscious, but it could be better. With social media now and the stage it is, And the fact that they are also feeling the pinch of government policies.
And they're very politically minded.
So they are likely, the next elections, nobody is going to tell a blind man that war is coming. He will feel it, he will hear it himself. So the youths are likely to become much more interested. But as I agree with you that we need to tell them to be more interested in politics, not to be indifferent or apathetic to what happens in the political space, because it has to do with their future.
By the end of the program, there were nearly 50 follow-up questions from the audience, which were summarized by the panelists. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olande.